Hey guys, what's going on? My name is J-Statik and this is Static Sessions. In this episode, we're going to be talking about acoustics. Acoustics is something that we all see online. You've seen Orlex, you've seen your Prime Acoustics, you've seen guys who make it on the side of the road, you've seen all that kind of stuff. And you see the ones that are 10, 20 bucks versus $10, $20,000. If you're like me, you don't have $10, $20,000. You're looking to spend the right amount for the right information that's happening in your room. So acoustics in general, a lot of people don't know how many you need, where to place them, why people place them in certain sections. So I'm going to try to go in depth into that. I'm not an acoustical engineer by any means whatsoever, but what I have learned is how to control my room to a certain degree where I feel comfortable so that when I'm listening back to my playback, I can hear everything clearly. I don't hear much standing waves, which I'll go into, and an overall good sounding room for a cheap cost. So what we're going to get into right now is acoustic diffusers versus absorption panels versus bass traps. So first we'll start off with the acoustic panels. Acoustic panels themselves are usually between 1 to 4 inches wide, and they are usually about 2 feet by about 4 feet high. Now, what they do is they control the reflections for mid to high-end frequencies. Mid to high-end frequencies, I'm talking about something between the 900 hertz range all the way up to 20K. What they do is they stop them from reflecting in your room. So if you've ever built or ever been in a completely drywalled room and you talk, most likely you hear echoes all over the place. So what this does is it prevents those echoes from taking place. Now, one's not going to do the job, obviously, but it will make a difference. What you would need to do is just keep placing them so that, one, they look nice, and number two, that you hear them stopping the reflections happening in your room. Around my room itself, I'm still not done treating this room. I have a quadruple drywalled walls, so 2 on the inside, 2 on the outside with studs on both sides. So that stops sound from going outwards. But inside my room, to control that, I have about 12 pieces of acoustic absorption panels, which are 3 inches wide, 2x4, and I place them in just areas that I think they would look nice, just because I know as I place them, the amount that I've placed on the wall will stop the echoes from happening. I've also placed a carpet on my floor, which is an easy, cheap trick. Stops reflections from the bottom bouncing back up to the top. And I also have 3 panels above me, which you can't see, but there's 3 acoustic panels that I've joined together and placed above me as well. So what this does for me is it stops early reflections coming right back to my ear and allows for a little bit of a tighter mix for me to hear only what I'm supposed to hear out of my monitors. Now, if you're in a room which has parallel walls, you're most likely getting standing waves, which is as your speaker outputs something, it hits the back wall, hits the front wall, hits the back wall, and it'll just keep bouncing back and forth, and it just stays there. Now, what that does is, if you're ever listening to a mix and say you have for whatever reason, this 90 or 110 or whatever hertz frequency, you won't know what it is, but something in your mix is just standing out beyond everything else. But if you listen to it everywhere else, it sounds fine. That's usually due to a standing wave in your room. So what's happening is your ears are hearing double or triple or whatever it may be of that certain frequency, which is making that stand out. It can happen with bass and it can happen with kicks a lot. Sometimes you think your kick is too loud or your bass is too loud or the thump is too loud. That's usually because there's a standing wave in the room. So what acoustic diffusers help with that is they scatter the energy, which is usually placed behind you, throughout your room. So it never comes back, and by the time it does come back, it's already lost most of its energy, so it's not going to be impacting you. Another thing that helps with the standing waves, especially for the low end, is your bass traps. Bass traps, I'm not going to say they're the greatest things in the world, but they do help control the low end. And why I'm saying they're not the greatest things in the world is the ones that you buy, even the ones that I have, Like, yeah, they collect some of the bass in the corners, but they're not the greatest. When you get into really high-end bass traps, you're obviously paying money for, it's doing the job properly. Whereas the ones you buy for, a couple $100, which is the ones I have, they do the trick. But what I'm relying mainly on is my ears. Like, I know my ears will adjust to a room, and eventually I'll be able to hear what I need to hear, and I can start mixing within that. Obviously, there's a degree to badness. You don't want to get to that bad level. So I try to control my room as much as possible. So low-end bass traps, you want to usually put them in the corners. And the reason why you put them in the corners is bass or low-end usually lives in the corners. Living in the corners meaning if you have a guy who's over and you're mixing down a track and he's like, man, I can't hear the low end, go tell him to sit in the corner, and I guarantee you he'll love the low end. It's one of those tricks where you just, if you're listening to a mix and you're an engineer, do not sit in the corner because all you're going to hear is the low end. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist between absorption panels, diffusers, low-end bass traps. What I would suggest is, please, if you're going to spend money on it, stay away from the, I'm going to say less expensive brands. Reason being is you pay for what you get. You get what you pay for. That's what I meant to say. You get what you pay for, and what you want to pay for is better acoustics. And honestly, I'm going to be honest, I'm a lazy guy. I'm not going to go sit there and build them. But if you have a builder's bone in your body, or you got a friend who's got a woodworking place, or you got a friend who likes to build things, join up with him. Buy some 2x4s, or buy some wood, buy some materials like Roxel insulation, safe and sounds type stuff. Get some nice breathable material fabric that's over top of it. Put it together, and you can build your own bass traps, even custom shapes. Do your thing. Who knows? You might even make a business out of it. But for me, I'm not about that life. So I found a guy who does make them, and he makes them pretty well. Whether I decide to upgrade or stay in this level, that's pretty much on me. But as of right now, I feel like my mixing space sounds pretty good, and it's good for me to understand and know where my speakers and where my ears are at. So beyond that, grab some good acoustics, get your friend to help him, do whatever you got to do. Don't go after the cheap stuff. If you can afford the high-end stuff, please hit me up because I could use your money as well. But getting important things solved in your room, especially acoustics and reflections, is very important. So definitely do that. And I bet you'll hear life come from your speakers that you've never heard before because it sounds so separated and nice because you're not hearing this jungle of a room with reflections. So definitely invest in good acoustics if you can. And that's it for acoustic absorption panels, diffusers, and low-end bass traps. I hope you guys learned something from this. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that little bell for future notifications. Other than that, I'm signing out. See you guys soon.